Coming up tonight, the Works Minister speaks out from quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Grand Bahama Group is sounding the alarm on illegal oil dumping. And Bahamians sound off on same-sex civil unions.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Jared Higgs. Topping news tonight, Works Minister Desmond Bannister is speaking out from quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19. He told Our News he doesn't know where he may have contracted the virus, and he revealed he took a COVID-19 test on Monday because he had planned to travel today.
I feel fantastic. I don't have any symptoms. I feel great.
That's Works Minister Desmond Bannister speaking from quarantine a day after receiving news that he tested positive for COVID-19. Bannister insists that he's feeling fine and has no symptoms.
You interrupted me. You know, I don't get to do this, be home very often. And today I was boiling some fish. You interrupted my boiling fish.
Bannister's positive test comes as the country struggles to flatten the curve of coronavirus cases. The entire cabinet, including the Prime Minister, is currently quarantined, along with staff who came into contact with Bannister. Meanwhile, rumors about the Prime Minister began circulating after the Cabinet Office announced last night that Bannister tested positive for the virus. However, Dr. Rupert Minnis said today that he did not test positive for COVID-19 despite rumors to the contrary. Bannister also spoke to reporters outside Cabinet without a mask on Tuesday. He responded to criticism that he should have been wearing a mask and could have put those journalists at risk.
I came there and I was wearing a mask. You recall that? And my voice was a bit muffled. So I asked every journalist there whether they had a problem with me taking the mask off. And all of them were distanced. And I believe I asked them as many as 3 times because they really couldn't hear me. And to their credit, all of them were socially distanced from me. I believe that I tried to do what was right to be able to convey the message, but I also asked all of them, I think at least 3 times, whether or not they objected. And if they objected, I would have spoken through the mask. I don't have a difficulty with that, but I know my voice was muffled.
Bannister says he doesn't know where he may have contracted the virus. The Works Minister says he took that COVID-19 test on Monday as he had plans to travel to Abaco today to inspect shanty towns. He says since word got out of his positive test, he's gotten a huge outpouring of support. He had this message for Bahamians.
This virus is vicious. It takes many lives. And there are also many of us in society who will have no symptoms. We'll be asymptomatic. And as a result, we could be in the midst of a group and we could be passing the virus on without knowing it. So the thing is for all of us to be extra careful in all of our interactions.
COVID-19 deaths climbing to 130 as health officials confirmed the death of a 52-year-old man on Abaco yesterday and the deaths of 2 men, ages 80 and 75, on New Providence on Tuesday. COVID-19 cases also increased by 84, taking the total to 6,135. There are 74 new cases on New Providence and 7 new cases with pending locations, while Abaco, Exuma, and Grand Bahama each reported 1 new case of the virus. Health officials also learned that 3 cases said to be from Abaco were actually on New Providence. Immigration Minister Elspeth Johnson is slamming work permit applicants and their employers who provide false housing information. Earlier this week, Works Minister Desmond Bannister revealed that the majority of persons living in an Andros shantytown were in fact holding legal documents. Johnson says they'll be going around checking documents.
We're also going island by island and identifying work permits that have been granted to ensure that employers guarantee or tell us the truth in terms of where persons are living. We're finding that too many persons are being granted licenses to be in the Bahamas and they're living in shanty towns. This cannot be.
Johnson says immigration officials are also focused on clamping down on the harboring of undocumented migrants. He says he wants stiffer penalties for offenders.
Because we're focusing more on harboring. So I want to say to the Bahamians, where it is you bring persons to live in the Bahamas, ensure that those persons that you will lease your apartments to are properly resident in or properly licensed by the Immigration Department. Because I've just recently spoken to the director after we had that interception off, I think it was Freeport, to say that we need to push for 1 count of harboring for every person that is found in your possession. So if we find 20 persons in your possession, I want the department to ask the court to ask them for at least $6,000 per person.
Meanwhile, illegal migration is down, according to Immigration Director Clarence Russell, who said deportation numbers have fallen sharply since 2018.
We executed 2,290 and deported persons. For the year 2019, we took into custody and deported 2,664 persons. And for the record, thus far, in 2020, in spite of the circumstances in which we find ourselves as a nation and indeed a world, we have deported 829 persons to today's date.
Grand Bahama environmentalists sounding the alarm over the illegal dumping of oil in East Grand Bahama. As police investigate the matter, those groups are calling for someone to be prosecuted. Kyle Joaquin has the story.
There's plastic bags in there.
Plastic bag inside there. A number of plastic bags.
It's a sight you'll have to see to believe. Oil and garbage dumped along Barbary Beach in East Grand Bahama, causing major damage to the environment.
But I mean, just look at this. And I'm pulling it up and I'm pulling through the pine needles that are here, and you have so many of the natural vegetation that's being impacted by this oil. I mean, we are Bahamians. This is ours.
The matter has prompted police to investigate, which Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquist hopes will result in someone being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Local environmentalists like Rashima Ingram of Waterkeepers Bahama says this is a travesty.
So if you look here, we have a series of bags, and each one of these bags are filled with oil. That's uncalled for. And so if you look at it, if you smell it, if you kind of just get a sense of the consistency of the oil, we can determine just from our inexperience in this area that smelling it and looking at it, it's definitely refined oil. It's fuel oil. It's something that's used by heavy machines.
At the site, there's bags containing more plastic bags filled with oil. Save the Bay's chairman Joseph Darbold says he's concerned about the extensive impact the illegal oil dumping in that area will have on the environment.
And so this penetrates the water table here right in the midst of Freeport, Grand Bahama. It means as this will migrate into our ocean. And as you can see, it's been here for a while because the thatch palms have died. The oil has completely obliterated them. And as you can see where they have died, because palmetto palms, they endure salt water, they endure fires, everything. But oil kills them. And as you can see, they've all died in this area.
Officials are currently in the process of finding the source. But one thing they do know is that the oil was intentionally dumped there. Nearby residents were in shock as they walked past and saw the oil. Meanwhile, these environmentalists say this is a classic example of why the Bahamas does not need to look into getting into things like exploratory oil drilling.
When we talk about the big discussion about oil drilling in our country, this is something that should not be happening. We are not ready for that discussion.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Thanks, Kyle. Meanwhile, the Grand Bahama Development Company said steps have been taken for the swift cleanup of hazardous material that was disposed of in the Lucaya area. Adding illegal dumping will not be tolerated. Officials say they are working with the relevant authorities to find the offenders. They added, unfortunately, littering and illegal dumping continue to occur throughout the area to the detriment of Grand Bahama's environmental and economic health. In other news, an LGBTQ advocate says the recent endorsement of civil unions for same-sex couples by Pope Francis should open up discussions for civil unions in the Bahamas. Erin Green said civil unions are a basic human right. She spoke with Gillian Gray, who also sought the views of the Attorney General.
Same-sex civil unions are something the Bahamas should consider, according to LGBTQ advocate Erin Green, who said it would allow people of that community to have the same rights as heterosexuals.
I think our government should not just recognize same-sex civil unions, but they should offer this contract, right? Along with any contract that memorializes a relationship. To be able to function in society, to get a house, to get a mortgage, or to buy a piece of property, right? To invest in things. This relationship may be very important or useful for that. And why should LGBTI people not be able to take advantage?
In a recent documentary, Pope Francis said that a civil union law should be created so that members of the LGBTQ community are legally covered. Green said civil unions are a fundamental human right, adding that while the new stance may not be a religious shift, it may be the start of a cultural one. She said churches in the Bahamas should begin to discuss what civil unions would mean for their congregants.
What it means for the church as a whole, but what it would mean for its congregants, for people who identify as queer or who are not comfortable enough even to say, well, I am gay, whether I recognize it as a sin or not. I think that I hope that it opens up a conversation for the whole Christian community.
When asked about the possibility of legislative changes to allow for same-sex civil unions, Attorney General Carl Bethel shied away from giving a definitive position, only saying everyone in the Bahamas has equal protection under the law.
I'm not commenting on social issues. Thank you.
So you can't even say that, if
No.
there could possibly be something in the
I have no comment. No, I have no comment on social issues like that.
Okay.
All people, all citizens, all persons in the Bahamas have equal protection of law, and that's all I have to say.
Now, the Christian community has not come out with an official position or statement, and Green said both the Christian community and the government should consider the Pope's comments, as it would greatly add to the LGBTQ community. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
More news on the way, but here's a first look at weather with meteorologist Greg Thompson. Good night, Greg.
Thanks, Jared. I'm meteorologist Greg Thompson with your first look at weather. Warmer day around the islands. Clouds are scattering a bit, but we do still have quite a bit of clouds out there with mostly cloudy conditions. Temperature around 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Your winds out of the east-southeast at 10 knots. Feels like temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Satellite-wise, a lot of that moisture lifting slightly towards the north, most of it remaining across the northwest Bahamas. Some showers and thunderstorms still occurring out there. We continue to see those conditions tonight through tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, a UB student shares his scary battle with COVID-19. Plus, the DNP urges government to get aggressive with owners of dilapidated downtown buildings. Stay tuned.
So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
at the conference.
More the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
A 22-year-old University of the Bahamas student said he never thought he would have contracted COVID-19. While he's thankful the worst is behind him, he says this experience has taught him a valuable lesson. Berthany McDermott has his story.
The reality of the threat of COVID-19 became all too real for one UB student who admitted that he contracted the virus because he was not following COVID-19 safety protocols around people he trusted. 22-year-old Devontae Hanna said while he limited his outings during the pandemic, there were times when he put himself in a vulnerable position.
It was around people that I knew and I trusted them. And unfortunately, a few of us ended up getting caught.
Hanna said he believes he contracted the virus on the job. He started experiencing COVID-like symptoms on October 7th and tested positive on October 14th. For him, it all started with a sore throat. Then came symptoms like a cough, chest pains, and a fever that rose as high as 102.4 degrees.
It got severe at one point, but it lasted. All of those symptoms really lasted for about 2 to 3 days. And then after that, I was just extremely tired afterwards. So for about a week later, I literally couldn't do anything because I had no energy to do anything. But and also I lost my sense of smell and my sense of taste. Those aren't back yet.
Hannah said he made the decision to isolate early in order to protect his loved ones. Before getting infected, the college student said he did not fear COVID-19.
We hear about these sorts of stuff always, and they're usually on the other side of the world. When COVID-19 came, I was kind of at ease because I didn't even catch the dengue fever. And my entire house had it, and I didn't even have it. So I was like, man, if I didn't catch the dengue and everybody in the house have it, I can't catch COVID.
The experience has taught him a valuable lesson. Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
The Downtown Nassau Partnership is calling on the government to get serious with the owners of abandoned and dilapidated buildings in the downtown area. Managing Director Ed Fields called those buildings eyesores that need to be demolished. Fields said if officials truly want to clean up the blight that exists east of Bay Street, the government will have to be aggressive and act on provisions in the Buildings Regulations Act.
What we're now asking government to do is to use the power of its authority, which in this instance is the Chapter 200, Section 10 of the Building Regulation Act, to cause those remedies to happen. It's either demolition or improvements to those structures.
Fields says successive governments have offered concessions to incentivize improvements to those buildings, but little has happened. He asserted if the carrot has not worked, it is an appropriate time to apply the stick.
Unfortunately, however, much of east of East Street, specifically more east of Elizabeth Avenue, there are buildings, derelict buildings, that remain in place, that the government has, that those incentives have not worked.
From the state of his office to the independence of Parliament, you never have to guess what House Speaker Housen Moultrie's views are. While sitting in the chair, he has been quite vocal about his feelings on these and other issues. It's one reason why a former parliamentary clerk feels first-time members of Parliament should never serve as Speaker. Berthany McDermott explains.
Former Chief Parliamentary Clerk Maurice Tynes delivering a scathing assessment of Housen Moultrie's performance as House Speaker, telling Our News he thinks it is a mistake to appoint first-time members of Parliament as House Speaker.
The office of Speaker ought to be a position that you attain after a couple of years of experience in the House. The nuances there are something that you have to you only get that through experience.
Since becoming House Speaker back in 2017, Moultrie's comments have come under fire on several occasions, including a lengthy rant aimed at Tynes, Opposition Leader Philip Davis and PLP Chairman Fred Mitchell. Most recently, Moultrie invited the government to move a vote of no confidence in him and said he will turn in his office keys on October 31st if improvements aren't made to his office, which has a leaky roof and no running water. Earlier this month, Moultrie was highly critical of the lack of independence of Parliament from the executive branch and likened it to a dinghy attached to the mothership. Tynes agreed Moultrie made some legitimate points, but said the venue was inappropriate.
I think he used the wrong venue and tone to express those views. And I think the conditions where the staff, the Speaker and staff have to work, they are deplorable. And I think they're not fit for a 21st century Bahamas.
However, Moultrie disagrees.
In those 24 years, he has indicated in his own article that he made numerous attempts to bring about the separation of powers and the autonomy and independence of the Parliament. So that hasn't succeeded. His method, in terms of memos and internal activities, has not succeeded. And no two men are made the same.
Tynes, who served as parliamentary clerk for 24 years, questioned Moultrie's interpretation of House rules. Now to those claims, Moultrie says he feels the former chief parliamentary clerk has a personal vendetta against him.
He knows that what I'm saying is true.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Still to come, Grand Bahama entrepreneurs received nearly $500,000 in funding. Stay tuned.
This is a huge deal. NFL Sunday Ticket is back, only with Rev Trio. All day football, all day Sunday. Enjoy all the benefits of Trio with a huge extra. Never miss a game with NFL Sunday Ticket, included in your Rev Trio bundle. All you have to do is opt in. TV, phone, and internet starting at just $99. Call 601-8992 to sign up now. Visit www.rev.bs/promotions for details.
Welcome back to Our News. 5 months after the launch of the Small Business Recovery Grant Program, $450,000 in business restoration funding has been awarded, bolstering the recovery efforts of more than 100 entrepreneurs devastated by Hurricane Dorian. The SBR team processed nearly 300 applications between May 1st and June 6th. Of that number, 103 businesses across Grand Bahama received grants ranging from $3,000 to $6,000. Senior Manager of Business Development at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Derek Newbold, said more than 90% of companies that applied to the program were either uninsured or underinsured, resulting in devastating losses and an even more difficult path to recovery. Meanwhile, boxes and bags of fresh fruits and vegetables were donated to the Ranfurly Home for Children today. The donation came from the Bahamas Agriculture and Marine Science Institute in recognition of World Food Day. BAMSI Chairman Stephen Turnquest says despite facing its own challenges during the pandemic with farmers and staffing, BAMSI felt compelled to give back.
We know with teenagers how their appetite is big, huge, they're always hungry. But despite all of that, it is the effort for us to show that what BAMSI is about, not only to grow to sell, but also to help in times like this.
The Ranfurly Home houses 29 children ranging in age from 14 to 18. The home's administrator, Alexander Roberts, says the home has seen a noticeable decrease in donations as a result of the pandemic, so it was heartwarming to receive the donation of healthy food items.
But it is very encouraging to see the variety of produce that has been grown right here in the Bahamas on Andros. So once again, we say thank you to you for your kind generosity, and we hope that it won't be a one-off donation.
Still to come, what's happening in sports? And later, the Royal Fidelity Market Watch. Stay with us.
Looking for a sweet deal for you or a loved one? Like always, Alive's got you covered. Pay your Rev bill via the MyAlive app, Alive Store, or Rev.bs and receive up to $50 off any device when you switch to Alive. Customers will receive their discount code via text, email, or receipt. Discount codes can be redeemed at any Alive location, van, or concierge service. Pay online, switch to Alive, and save a dime. Why worry when you can switch and save? Alive, still connected.
The Tampa Bay Rays even up the World Series. Marcellus Hall has that and more in this edition of Sports.
Well, percentages start to fall when teams go down 0-2 in a World Series. Tampa Bay Rays trying to avoid just that scenario as they went up against the LA Dodgers last night, down 1-0 in the best of 7. Would they respond? Let's take a look. Game 2 of the World Series last night. Tampa Bay Rays looking to bounce back from a Game 1 loss. Brandon Lowe, he broke out of his playoff slump big time. Lowe hitting not 1 but 2 home runs on the night. Rays actually 28 home runs in the postseason. That's a new record for single playoff home runs by one team. Tampa, they hold on to win 6-4. They even the series now at 1 game ahead of Game 3 on Friday. Rays left-hander Blake Snell, solid on the mound. He kept the Dodgers hitless through 4 innings. Meanwhile, the NFL returns with Thursday night football this evening, an NFC East battle between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. Both teams have struggled this year. Eagles at 1-4-1. They're second in the East. Giants, meanwhile, 1-5 on the year. And of course, Game 3 of the World Series comes your way tomorrow. We'll give you details about that and more. Meanwhile, as well, don't forget to check out the 4th installment of The Locker Room, our new sports show right here on RTV. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marcellus Hall.
And that's a look at news. We throw it back to meteorologist Greg Thompson for the extended weather forecast.
Thanks, Jared. In our second look at weather, we take a look at our satellite imagery across the area. Area of low pressure across the Western Caribbean, generating quite a bit of moisture and bringing that across our area. National Hurricane Center will continue to monitor this area as it is expected to move towards the north and across our area through the weekend. We also have Hurricane Epsilon out there in the open Atlantic, not really providing any problems for us, but the swells will continue to affect our islands. Your boating forecast for all areas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the east to southeast, 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be 3 to 5 feet near shore, but up to 9 feet offshore in some moderate northeasterly swells. Low tide will be at 7:49 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. And now we'll look at your extended forecast through Tuesday. That's a look at our weather. Have a safe night, everyone.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by Royal Fidelity, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. To catch Our News on the go, download the RevGo Play app. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Jared Higgs. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.